Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our first LinkedIn live event. Since this is the first, um, there might be some technical challenges. I'm not sure. We haven't done this before, but hopefully it's all fine. So what you can do is if you are on LinkedIn, there's a comment functionality, so you can use it if you have any questions, and I'll be able to see them here live. So whenever you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll get back to them. So yeah, let's have some fun. All right, so the topic for today is, as you've seen, is Accelarate Cloud Incident Response, which is about our new acquisition tool. So we're going to discuss that today. My name is Korstian Stam. I own an incident response firm. It's called Invictus Incident Response. We are based in the Netherlands. As you can see, that is this little red thing on the map. We work everywhere though, so we are pretty global in the work that we do. We love incident response, and specifically we love cloud incident response. So whether it's in Microsoft environments or it's in AWS or Google, doesn't really matter for us. We like to investigate those incidents and help clients resolve their incidents like that. So that's enough about this for now. Let's get into the reason why we're here. We have developed something new, which is called the Microsoft Extractor Suite. For the people that have been following us or me or the other people that worked on this tool, you might know that there was also something else in the past with a similar name. So we'll get to that. The Microsoft Extractor Suite is the topic of the day. This tool will help us accelerate our cloud incident response, specifically in Microsoft cloud environment. So if you don't want to listen to this and you rather want to figure it out all by yourself, you can. You can go right now to this GitHub page, and you can also go to read the docs, which is associated with this project, where you can just grab the tool and do whatever you want. The documentation should be awesome and good and clear, so you can run off right now and test the tool in whatever way you want. But I hope you want to stay here, and when I'll explain you a bit about the background of the tool, what it's capable of, and we'll also do a little bit of a live demo, which is somewhat scary, but let's hope the demo gods are in our favor. This event is also recorded to YouTube, so I'll post a link later. So if you need to drop or you're worried that you're missing something, don't be. We'll have a recording, so yeah, you can always look at it. So, but this is the most important information, of course. Where is the tool located? It's in GitHub. It's an open source tool, and we have documentation available right now. So without further ado, let's talk about some history about this tool. How did it actually come to this day? So I think around 2009 to 2018, I was working at PwC together with some of my colleagues in the incident response team, and we were facing or helping clients with quite a lot of business email compromise cases. So in business email compromise case, as you probably know, is when an attacker tries to compromise an email environment of some sort, and where they try to establish persistence and maybe read some emails and ultimately try to make financial gain from this attack. So in response to that whole trend, because it was quite a trending attack, so to say, so we saw a lot of clients which had these issues, and most of them actually had Office 365 installed, because by default it isn't that well secured, I would say, especially not in 2019. One of the main evidence sources for these investigations is the unified audit log. You can acquire the unified audit log in a number of ways. The problem was, and still is that there's some limitations to how much data you can acquire directly or immediately, I would say. So we developed a little tool which was called the Office 365 Extractor. The only thing it did was basically grab the unified audit log for whatever time it's available and dump it to a CSV file, and then we use it in whatever log management solution like Elastic or Splunk to do our investigation, which is all fine. It worked fine. I think it's still available on GitHub somewhere at the PwC GitHub page, but it's no longer maintained at all. But it was quite popular, so we're happy with that. quickly moving forward, the people that developed the tool and myself, we all left PwC and we went our different ways. But still, there was a demand for this tool, and I took it upon me to at least maintain it and update it a little bit, which led to the creation of the Microsoft 365 Extractor Suite. Why? Because Office 365 went through a name change. It's now Microsoft 365. And we also wanted to include modern authentication. So in the first versions, you could only do basic authentication, which is not that secure, of course. So this script also allowed for multi-factor authentication, etc. So it's pretty cool, worked well. However, it was also somewhat limited, and luckily for me, I was able to hire a very smart guy and who used to work with me on the Office 365 extractor. And one of his projects was making this tool into something next level. And that's what I think we've done with the Microsoft Extractor Suite. And we are definitely not done yet, but this is the initial release that you can already use. So what is it? It's a complete PowerShell module, not just a standalone script. And it can do acquisition activities both in Microsoft 365, but also in Azure, which is technically two different things, which is quite important because then it will be more useful for different types of attack, not just business email compromise cases. All right. So what does it do, or what is it? As I mentioned, it's a complete PowerShell module, meaning you can, I will show you later, you can import the module and it will have several functions available for you that you can use. You can use the acquire data from Microsoft 365, so the unified audit log and some other evidence sources that I will also show to you. But also it's now able to connect to the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. So if you are a Microsoft client and you use Azure, maybe for your compute engine or whatever else reason, you will probably also use Azure Active Directory for authentication and for user management. There's a few evidence sources in there that you definitely want to acquire if you're doing an investigation or if you're doing instant response. So that is also supported now with this tool, with this PowerShell module, I should say. We think it's especially useful if you're doing IR, and we use it ourselves all the time. So yeah, we definitely eat our own dog food. The main reason for the existence of this tool is that there's limitations when you are doing an acquisition in Microsoft. So for instance, for the unified audit log, there's a limit to how much data you can extract at once, or there's a limit to the history of the data you can acquire at once with certain APIs. So we need to work our way around these limitations, because if you're doing an instant response, oftentimes you come in and you just want to grab everything, or maybe a target acquisition, that's also fine, but you don't want to have limitations around how much data you can export, or the limitation, oh, you can only see the last 7 days, for instance. So this tool grabs everything if you wanted to, and it will export it out for you. In the past, the export format was limited to a CSV file. However, Microsoft has moved also for its logging towards JSON. So a lot of the logs are actually natively written in JSON, and we needed to support JSON as well, because certain parsers or integration opportunities rely on JSON output. So we also support JSON acquisition now, so not just CSV. What is the good news? Well, it's free. It's very free. So you can just grab it. You can take it. You can even, if you want to, you can stamp your own logo on it, and you can say, well, I made this, which wouldn't be very, very nice, but it's possible under the license. The main thing for us with this license is that everyone can use it and you can do whatever you want with it. However, we are not responsible. So if you do something weird with it, or you break something, which is highly unlikely if you do it, but if you do, we are not responsible. So that's the only real limitation here with the license. As I mentioned, we're not done yet with this Microsoft Extractor Suite. It's a suite, so it will support more things. So we have some ideas for the future that we'll definitely add to the tool. So there will be more log sources, etc., etc. But that will be for another day. What is it not? I think that's also important to note before you get the wrong expectations. It's not an analysis tool. So it's an acquisition tool, meaning this tool will help you acquire all data that you want from a Microsoft environment. However, it will not tell you where the attackers are. what they look like, or what their IP address is automatically. You will need to do your own analysis. There's ways to do this, and we have also written blogs about it. There's other ways. There's a lot of resources out there on how you can, for instance, investigate these loggings, and we've also developed training for that. But that's not what this tool does. It's an acquisition tool in the beginning. So that is what Microsoft Extractor Suite is. So what can you do in a little bit more detail? I mentioned evidence sources or data sources before. So you need to understand, in the Microsoft Cloud world, we have Microsoft 365, which is the software as a service solution. So that does your email, your OneDrive, your Teams, whatever. That's the Microsoft 365 offering. And then there's the Azure side of things, which is more related to, for instance, Azure Active Directory is a component of it, but also compute, etc. Azure Active Directory is pretty unique because it's also used in Microsoft 365 for signing in, actually. So if you use Microsoft 365 in the backend, you will also use Azure Active Directory. So going back, now that we know at least the split, what can this tool do for you? So it can acquire the unified audit log. If you've ever done anything in Microsoft 365, you will know that this audit log is the most important thing, basically, for your analysis or for your investigation. And this tool will reliably grab all the data that you want. There's also something called the admin audit log and the mailbox audit log. The admin audit log is specifically writing or recording what admin activity was taking place. However, in the UAL, you will also have that information available. There's also the mailbox audit log, so a specific mailbox related activity. You can also acquire that with the tool. And we also cover email rules. So we'll talk about the use case a little bit later, but email rules are pretty important to analyze. Then there's also support for the message trace logging, or sometimes called the message tracking logging. So what is that? Well, if you send an email, it traverses through several servers and there's a beginning and an endpoint. So if someone sends an email from your environment to your environment, you'll have a message tracking or message trace logging available to tell you where the previous or the next hop was. This can be useful to identify, was an email, for instance, sent or received when it's deleted from a mailbox itself. So you can still figure that out after the fact. So that's why that's useful. So we also support acquisition of the message trace log. That is the Microsoft 365 side of the house. Then there's the Azure Active Directory side, which is pretty cool because it's really new, and yeah, I'm very excited about it. We also support acquisition of the Azure AD sign-in log. So that covers several types of sign-ins, which goes a little bit too far for now, but basically if you sign into Azure Active Directory, you can do it through several means and several types of logins, basically, or types of identity, I should say, and that's all recorded in the sign-in logs. And there's also the audit log. So they will tell you what is happening in an Azure Active Directory environment, like was a new group created or a new user, etc., etc. The last one is an interesting one and might be a bit a weird one if you're not aware of this type of activity, but we also acquire the OAuth applications in Azure Active Directory, or you can actually do that if you want to, and its permissions. So there's a very interesting attack, specifically in Azure Active Directory, where you can register an OAuth application, and you can use that to interact programmatically with Active Directory or with Azure. So you can read maybe people's emails, even if you have the right permissions, etc. This attack type is interesting, and it was used in the past in the SolarWinds instance as well. So in an investigation, you might want to know what were the registered applications, and we can also acquire that with this tool. So that is basically what the tool can do right now, and there will be more. There was a question that I quickly saw flashing my screen. So yes, so yeah, it's already answered the question. So definitely we also grab the logs from Azure. So to give a little bit of context to this question is, if you have a sign-in event in Azure if you sign into Microsoft 365 in the backend, it is also a sign into the Azure Active Directory, or actually the login is happening in the Azure Active Directory. So that event will be recorded in two places, in the UAL, so in the Unified Audit Log in Microsoft 365, and also in the Azure Active Directory sign-in logs. The Azure Active Directory sign-in logs are more useful because they contain more details about the authentication itself. So it will have more details on the specific authentication or authorization attempt. However, the UAL has by default longer retention. So it's preferably you look at your sign-in events from the Azure Active Directory side, but if you only have the UAL, it will still be a good source for your investigation. I hope this helps. Moving on. What can the tool do? So if you install the tool, and we'll do it live in a bit, you can grab all the commands from this specific module. Actually, the name is not correct at the moment. The name is a little bit different, but I'll show it to you. But if you do get command and then the name of the module, you will see all the functions. So currently there are 16 functions. The most important ones that you need to know is that there's 2 connect functions. So if you want to connect to Microsoft 365, there's one. And if you want to connect to Azure Active Directory, there's another connect function that you need to run before you do anything. Then there's several get functions. Those are the acquisition functions. So they'll get you all the data. And there's also 2 sort of live analysis functions. Those are the show functions. So they start with show dash something. So that's currently what's available within the PowerShell module. Before you can do anything, of course, you need the right permissions, and preferably you are not going into an incident response engagement or an investigation and you say, give me global admin. That's not a good idea. We should probably use the least privileged access where possible. So with Microsoft 365, if you want to do something for the unified audit log, we need the view only audit log permission. You can set it up through the admin center for Microsoft 365, and we have all the documentation available for this. If you've never done this before, it's pretty easy. If you want to do something with Azure Active Directory, you can grab either one of those roles that I've mentioned here. And of course, the global administrator can do anything, but if you can avoid it, please use, for instance, the security reader role, which is limited to only security-related information. So if you have an investigation, should probably say to your client, or if it's internal, you should say, I want to have a new user, an acquisition user, for instance, with these permissions and these roles, and then you can use this PowerShell module. So let's say we want to use this. We need to download the tool, and we need to start PowerShell because it's all PowerShell in Microsoft World. And we need to import our module. We can do that with import module and then the name of the module. Then, depending on your use case, so maybe you want to do an acquisition of the Microsoft 365 logs, you'll need to use connect Microsoft 365. Or if you want to grab Azure AD logs, you need to use connect Azure, and you need to authenticate into your environment that you want to acquire data from. And then once you've done that successfully, of course, you can run your functions. So you can say, oh, I want to grab the audit log from my Azure Active Directory, so I run get AD audit logs. On this screenshot to the right, we also want to show you when you run the tool, there's now a new directory created automatically with the output of the specific function. So if you do an acquisition of the unified audit log, you'll get a directory saying unified audit log. If you do something for Azure Active Directory, you will see a different folder name. For the forensics people among us, there's also a log file.txt, which records everything that you do with this tool. So it will give you all the timestamps and the commands that you've executed and all the errors as well. It's pretty useful if you're building your chain of custody, etc., and your chain of evidence. So a small asterisk here. So you need certain commandlets or modules to be installed before you can use this tool, but we'll assume you've done that. This is all very well documented as well. So that's preparation. So how can we use this in our actual life, and what do we use this tool for? So for instance, if we have a business email compromise case, so how can we start our investigation using this tool? Or what we could do as a first step is, for instance, use the show function. So we could say, give me all your current mailbox rules. So in a business email compromise case, oftentimes an attacker creates a forwarding rule that forwards interesting emails to another account, or maybe a forwarding rule that stores all the interesting emails in a separate folder. Regardless, forwarding rules are a tactic that is often used by BEC threat actors. So for instance, we could run these two commands, give an overview of all the different rules. And let's say we find something interesting. We're going to say we want to grab the full unified audit log now with get UAL all. And this will acquire the complete unified audit log. And then you're on your way to do your analysis. Hopefully, through running the show commands, you already have an idea on where you should focus your investigation. That's one basic use case. Another use case is the malicious app. So as I mentioned, this is a somewhat common attack where someone registers an application and in Azure Active Directory, and through that application, they can perform all kinds of activity, which is not that obvious if you don't know what you're looking for. So what we could do is, for instance, we expect, for instance, or we suspect that this is happening, we could run the get OAuth permissions function, which gives us all the applications that are currently registered with its permissions. And then maybe we've identified an interesting application. Next, we can run the get AD sign-in logs to get all the sign-in logs, and we can search those sign-in logs for the application ID that we've identified with the get OAuth permissions functions. So that's another use case that we sometimes see or that you can do. These are just some ideas that we have. Of course, feel free to ignore this and do whatever you want with the tool, but these are some options that you have with this tool. So we've talked about it enough. Let's see if we can do a live demo, which is always dangerous, but let's do it. Give me 1 second. I need to enable my machine. And then we should be able to share my screen, and we are good to go. Let me see. So I am just booting up my virtual machine. Let's see. I'll hide my presentation. So bear with me for a second. It is loading up my virtual machine. So another interesting thing is that there are some requirements from an operating system perspective. The preferred approach is using Windows. Almost everything works with the tool, but not the Azure Active Directory part. The command or the module that we use to connect to Azure Active Directory is a preview module, and that is currently not supported on Mac or Linux. So you kind of have to use Windows for that. However, if you only want to do the unified audit log or the Microsoft 365 stuff, that works perfectly fine on a Mac or whatever. All right. So let's start from the beginning. We are going to grab our tool from the GitHub. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully this is visible. So what we do is we go to the GitHub page. We have a lot of cool tools, of course, but for now we'll focus on the Extractor Suite. So if you click on it, you can either use Git to download the file or just download the zip. So I have prepared, of course, and I have the tool already available here on my desktop. So if I go into this directory and I type in the bar PowerShell, it will launch a PowerShell window right from this directory. So what is the first step that we need to do? We need to import our module. We can do that with import module and then the name of the module, which is Microsoft. Should autocomplete. Yeah, Microsoft Extractor Suite .psd1, which is the PowerShell module file. So we run this command, and then it gives us this nice little feedback saying this is our tool and this is the Microsoft Extractor Suite. So what can we do next? Well, we can just start with authentication or connection, but before we do that, I want to show you quickly. We can use the get command and then the name of the module. So that is Microsoft Extractor Suite. And if we do that, we get all the available functions. So as I showed you in the slide, so we'll have the connect functions, the get functions, and the show functions. If you want to do something and you're not connected, so let's say we forgot to connect and we just gonna want to grab the Azure Active Directory audit logs, we can say get AD audit logs. If we do this, it says you must call connect Azure before running the script. So it's a nice little sort of dummy-proof way for us to help you that you forgot something. So before you do anything, please connect to the right environment. All right, we'll start with Microsoft 365. So we can run connect Microsoft 365, hit enter, and you should get a pop-up, and then you need to select an account with the right permissions. I have 2 already available, so this will be the account within the environment that you're trying to acquire data from. All right, so we'll take this one. I need to copy paste this password from somewhere. 1 second. All right, once we done that, we click sign in and you will be connected, hopefully. Yes, we are connected now. So what can we do? So we can, for instance, say, show me the current mailbox rules for this environment. And when we do that, it is going to go through all mailboxes in this Microsoft 365 environment and is going to check if it can find forwarding rules. So in yellow, we can already see it has some results. So I'll let it run for a bit and then we can look at the results. But this will, of course, be different for your environment. But here it says it found 6 inbox rules. So we can quickly see what this rule does. So this rule is for the username Fortuna Hodon. It's not enabled. It is moving to a folder called RSS. So what it's doing is if the message includes the word project, it's going to move that specific mail to RSS. Not a very interesting rule, but just a rule that's currently enabled. So this one is more interesting. So this one is called the lead forward rule, which is a very interesting name. And it's forwarding emails to hacker@gmail.com. So when we see something like this, we probably want to investigate further, right? So what we can do is we can also use the get mailbox rules to, oh, there's a lot of get mailbox rules function, and this will acquire the mailbox rules to a CSV file, and it will basically give us a way to look at this in Excel or whatever you want to do. So this one is going to the mailbox rules again, and it found 6, and it's going to store them in a CSV file. So again, it's going to take a few seconds. And now if we go to the directory of the tool, we have an output directory, and he will have a subdirectory, and maybe it's a bit difficult to see, but you have to believe me, there's a rules file or directory here, and this file contains all the different rules. So you can use that in whatever other tool you want to do it for. So that's the rule side. The more interesting thing is, of course, the unified audit log. So let's see if we can acquire the unified audit log. It's a very big log. It has by default 90 days of retention, so it can become very big very quickly. So what can we do to limit this? Well, we can say get URL and then we can supply a start date. This start date will be local to the way you've set up your system. So if it's an American system, it will have a different time notation compared to European one, for instance. But this one is on a test system that has a American notation, so we'll use that. So we'll do data from the 19th or the 20th of April, which is yesterday, until today. So let's see. And we want to output. We can also supply the output format. Normally it will be CSV, but as I mentioned, we also support JSON now. So we'll say -output JSON. And when we click enter, it will say, I'm going to acquire all the data within that period. If you see something red, that means it has found more logs than it can acquire at once. The limit in PowerShell is 5,000 records within a certain time period. So what the script will do is it will basically try to shorten the interval of the search to make the logs basically fit within the 5,000 limits. So now it's trying to acquire 12 hours of logging at once, and it found too much. So it's lowering the interval to almost 7-8 hours, and then it's able to acquire the data because it's less than 5,000. And the script will automatically decrease and increase the interval to do the complete acquisition. Well, this is how exciting acquisition is. This is basically looking at a terminal saying, yeah, I found something or I didn't find anything, and then it is done. So if you have a few seconds, we'll wait until it completes. Should be relatively quick, but this is the challenge, is these are limits set by the Microsoft PowerShell module, so there's no way around it basically. So we have to, yeah, abide by these limits. So it has successfully grabbed all the logs. So now if you go to the output directory, we'll have a new directory called Unified Audit Log. And this one has the date and time of the acquisition. So you can have more than one, and it will have several JSON files for the logs that it has collected. So now you can take these JSON files and load them into your Splunk or into your Elastic or whatever tool you use to do your analysis. So this is pretty cool, and something that most people probably use. So we can also do more advanced stuff where we say, oh, I only want to acquire data from a specific user. You can do that with a -user ID command, and you can do the same thing. All right, so what else is interesting? So let's see how we can acquire data from Azure Active Directory. So again, we need to call connect Azure instead of connect Microsoft 365. So we'll do that. We'll get the same pop-up. Now I need to copy and paste two things. So we'll use this account with this password. And you're now signed in. So now we can do something, get AD, and then we can say get AD sign-in logs. This will acquire all available sign-in logs. Depending on your license, this will be between 7 and 30 days by default. So if you do this, there's less feedback because this specific module doesn't really give us any progress indicators, but it will tell us, of course, when it started and when it's completed, but it doesn't really say how many records it found visually in this tool, but of course we can check afterwards. So we have to be a little bit patient here, which we definitely are. And then it will acquire all the sign-in logs. Again, the good news is that this data will be written to an output directory. So whilst we are waiting, we can go to, we already see, oh, there's a new Azure AD output directory, which now contains all the sign-in logs, and we can use that again for our analysis. So it's pretty cool. And this is basically what I want to show you live. So it can do anything related to Microsoft 365 and Azure Active Directory. In the future, we'll add more log sources. So there's a few other Azure specific logs that we want to add, and we'll do that. And if you have any good ideas, of course, feel free to let us know what you would like to have in the tool as well. And going back to our presentation, I basically added in some commands. Last but not least, or if you want to help, we would be very appreciative if you want to help with this thing, because I think it's a pretty cool tool. If you have an IR case or an investigation and you use this tool, just, I don't know, send us a message, Twitter, LinkedIn, email to let us know it was useful, or maybe if it wasn't useful, also do let us know and how we can improve it. It's always fun to hear, yeah, we used your tool, it was good, or maybe it was bad. That's less fun to hear, but we'll fix it then. But we love to hear from the users, and yeah, that's hopefully what you can do for us. If you have an active IR and you need some help from, we believe we are experts in this field, you can also call us, so we will be able to help you actually with your IR case, or we can support you in the backend if you want to run it yourself, but you would like to have someone shadowing you or helping you out. You can always call us or let us know. We're happy to help. We've done quite a bit of Microsoft Cloud IR investigations already, but we are always happy to help. And of course, if you have good ideas, or if you are a coder and you want to help out, it's all open source. You can submit your ideas to GitHub or add some more stuff to it, and we would be very glad to accept it if it's good. And last but not least, and it's a little bit of promotion, I think I'm allowed to do that on my own stream. We have developed a 2-day Microsoft Cloud Incident Response training, where we go into so much detail about all the different attacks, etc. And We'll also use this tool, we'll use the Graph API and all the cool stuff, but that's not, it is sort of out, but it's not public yet. So if you are interested in following that, just, I don't know, follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter and we'll do our whole PR thing there. But that training will run this year, but we're just not sure where yet because that's depending on some things, which I cannot disclose yet. But if you want to help us, that would be, of course, super cool if you join one of those trainings. And that was everything that I wanted to share with you basically in this stream for today. I'm super glad that you all joined on your Friday afternoon for the people in Europe and wherever else you are in the world. And I also want to, if you have some questions, now is the time to ask, of course. And I'm happy to ask these questions or answer the questions right now. Or if you want to do it directly, you can, you know where to find me. I think I've done enough PR now. So if you have anything, you can ask your questions now or feel free to reach out directly. I think if you type something, I'll be able to see it. So I'm seeing some positive feedback about the tool, so I'm happy with that. But no real questions, I think. Thank you, everyone, for the nice words. Yeah, it means a lot. Oh yeah, last but not least, I'm the one presenting this, but I'm definitely not the one that has done most of the hard work. So I want to give a big shout out to Joey, who has done some amazing work on developing this tool. So yeah, it's much appreciated. And if you see him, yeah, say thanks to him as well. He has done a lot of good work around this tool. Let me quickly check if there's any questions, I think, on LinkedIn, and otherwise we'll close off for now. The recording again will be up whenever I'm able to find the recording and upload it, but that will be done soon. Let me check. All right, so I don't think there's any questions, so I'm going to leave you all, and thank you all for joining in, and have a great weekend already, and I hope to see or meet you in the future. And have a good one. Bye-bye.